Cops kick in a black woman's door at 2 a.m. Then they notice her FBI jacket on the wall and go silent. They hit the wrong apartment in Chicago at the worst possible moment. The door blew inward in a burst of splintered wood, shards skidding across the hardwood as 3 officers charged through the wreckage. Their flashlights sliced through the dark like blades. At the front was Ronald Watts himself, the officer calling the shots, his boot grinding over the shattered frame as he stepped inside. Right behind him came his sergeant, one hand hovering near his weapon, while the captain lingered in the rear, quietly taking in the damage they had already done. In the bedroom, the woman jerked awake. Sheets knotted around her legs, half blinded by the sudden wash of light. She wore only underwear and a tank top. "Hands where I can see them," Watts snapped. She lifted them slowly. As her vision cleared, the room came into focus in pieces. Furniture overturned, drawers ripped open, papers strewn everywhere. Then Watts's flashlight landed on the bedroom wall and stopped. Hanging there was a navy jacket, and across the back, in unmistakable gold letters, was FBI. The beam lingered for 3 full seconds. His radio crackled. The sergeant's breathing changed. The air in the room shifted. The jacket hung there like a warning, like a witness, but they were already too far in to stop. They had chosen the wrong door, the wrong woman, the wrong night. She watched them tear through her bedroom with the cold focus of someone conducting an audit. Her eyes followed badge numbers. She marked the exact time on the digital clock. When the sergeant yanked open her dresser, she memorized his face. Most people would have been terrified. She was calculating. Watts reached for the purse on her nightstand. His movements were smooth, too smooth, the motions of a man who had done this before. He slipped something into the side pocket, then immediately pulled it back out. "Well, well," he said, holding it up. "Look what we found." The woman's mouth barely moved, just the faintest hint of a smile. Her federal credentials folder was sitting in plain view on the dresser, and every one of them had walked past it. On the nightstand beside it, an encrypted phone sat charging in silence, packed with 15 years of federal cases. Watts raised a small plastic bag, and the white powder inside flashed under the light. The woman's fingertips brushed the edge of her sheet. Beneath it was something else they had missed. The phone on her nightstand contained 15 years of buried secrets. Watts had no idea who he had dragged out of bed, but she knew exactly why he was there. This was not random. This was not a misunderstanding. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The federal files scattered across her floor told an entirely different story from the one they believed they were writing. Hidden inside the bedroom lamp, a digital recorder had been running since the instant the door exploded inward. Every shouted command, every illegal step, every planted piece of evidence, every second of unlawful entry was being captured. The sergeant moved to the closet, and now his hands trembled just enough for her to notice. Good. He should have been nervous. She stayed perfectly still, but her mind raced through procedure, federal evidence rules, constitutional violations, civil rights statutes. They had no idea what kind of room they had just entered. She sat up straighter on the bed. "I want to see your warrant." Watts did not hesitate. "We don't need a warrant for a noise complaint, sweetheart. You do for a search this extensive." Her voice was level, controlled, and authoritative enough to make the sergeant stop mid-search. "You've already gone far beyond the scope of any noise complaint investigation." Watts narrowed his eyes. "You a lawyer or something? I know my rights under the Fourth Amendment." Her tone never rose. "This search is illegal." From the doorway, the captain stepped forward. "Ma'am, we got reports of narcotics activity at this address." "From whom?" she asked. "What specific probable cause justified forced entry?" The 3 men traded glances. Her question hung in the room like smoke. The sergeant was the first to recover. "Anonymous tips said you were dealing." Anonymous tips do not justify warrantless searches of a private residence. The legal citations came from her as easily as breathing. Miranda v. Arizona, Terry v. Ohio, Mapp v. Ohio. Watts's face darkened. "You think you're smart? I think you're violating federal law." That landed hard. Not state law, federal law. The captain cleared his throat. "Let's just process her." But she kept going. "I need your badge numbers. All of you. You're not in any position to demand anything." The sergeant growled. "Every citizen has the right to identify officers conducting a search," she said, staring directly at each man in turn. "Badge numbers. Now." Watts's hand moved instinctively toward his badge. "You don't need that. The law says otherwise. Her calm persistence rattled them. The people they usually arrested were frightened, confused, easy to control. This woman was cutting apart their conduct like a surgeon. Reluctantly, the captain gave his number. The others followed. She repeated each one back flawlessly, locking them into memory. I also want confirmation that your body cameras are recording. The sergeant's hand rose to his chest camera. The red light blinked. They're recording. Good, she said. Then there will be a complete record when this reaches federal court. That word again, federal. Watts leaned closer. Listen, lady, we found drugs in your home. You can cooperate, or we can make this a lot worse for you. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you options. She studied him for a beat. Option 1, I admit to crimes I didn't commit. Option 2, you invent more charges. For a second, the only sound in the room was radio static. You've got a mouth on you, the sergeant muttered. I have constitutional rights. Watts pulled out handcuffs. You're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance. As the metal locked around her wrists, she turned her face toward the body cameras and spoke clearly. I am being arrested on planted evidence. These officers conducted an illegal search without a warrant or probable cause. I did not consent to this search. Shut up, Watts hissed. I have the right to remain silent, she said evenly, and I also have the right to speak. This is a false arrest based on fabricated evidence. The sergeant grabbed her arm and jerked her forward. Move. She did, but she kept talking. I am requesting immediate legal counsel. I am requesting a supervisor. I am requesting a review of the body camera footage. Every request was precise, properly timed, professionally delivered. The captain watched her more carefully now. Something about this was wrong. As they marched her through the wrecked living room, she mentally logged every violation: excessive force, unlawful entry, evidence tampering, civil rights abuse. Watts asked the question that made the sergeant pause. How do you know so much about police procedure? She said nothing. She did not need to. Her federal credentials were still lying on the dresser, ignored, but her silence said enough. At the front door, the sergeant finally understood that she knew far too much to be an ordinary civilian. Her questions were too exact. Her terminology was too polished. Her calm was too complete. Ordinary people do not cite case law during arrests. Ordinary people do not ask for body camera audits. Ordinary people do not talk about federal court like they live there. Watts shoved her toward the patrol car, but uncertainty had already crept into his voice. You been arrested before? No. Then how do you... He stopped himself. How do I what? She asked, turning the question back on him so neatly he could not finish. The answer was worse than he wanted to say aloud. The sergeant opened the rear door. Radio chatter filled the night as dispatch calls bled through static. Ordinary police business continuing while they made the single biggest mistake of their careers. She slid into the back seat without resistance. Through the window, she watched them collect evidence from her apartment. They bagged the drugs Watts had planted. They photographed the destruction they had caused. They documented everything except the truth. But the truth was documenting itself. Her encrypted phone still sat on the nightstand. Her federal files still lay across the floor. Her credentials were still in plain sight, and the recorder in the bedroom lamp was still running. Watts slammed the car door. Through the glass, she heard him speaking to the captain. Something's wrong with her. How so? She knows too much. The captain looked back at the car, at the woman sitting handcuffed in the rear with perfect composure. Run her name when we get downtown. Already planned on it. But they had already waited too long. They had already made too many mistakes. They had already left too much behind. The woman in the back seat was not their victim. She was their reckoning. The patrol car rolled away from the ruined apartment, broken glass glittering under the Chicago streetlights behind them. Watts drove. The sergeant sat in the passenger seat. The captain followed in another vehicle, standard protocol for a high-value arrest, though nothing about this was standard anymore. She sat in the rear cage, hands cuffed behind her, the metal divider separating her from the officers. In the reflection of the window, she studied their faces. The sergeant turned around. You gonna tell us what you really do for work? She stayed quiet. Strong, silent type, huh? Watts adjusted the mirror. We'll see how long that lasts. Over the radio, dispatch continued with the routine rhythm of the city. A domestic on 5th Street, a traffic stop off the highway, the usual chaos of Chicago after dark. The night kept moving. They had no idea what they had just set into motion. The sergeant lowered his voice. Think she heard anything about the investigation? Watts glanced up at the mirror. What investigation? You know exactly what investigation. Silence. Then radio noise again. She can't know about that, Watts said at last, but doubt ran through the sentence. She committed every word to memory, every hesitation, every admission, every look. They turned onto Main Street, and the police station rose ahead. All concrete, fluorescent light and bureaucracy, the kind of place where people were meant to disappear into paperwork and procedure. Watts pulled into prisoner intake. Security cameras followed the vehicle as it stopped. The sergeant turned again. This can go easy or hard, your choice. She met his eyes through the divider. Which one saves your careers? The question hit both men like cold water. Watts killed the engine. What's that supposed to mean? It means you should be very careful about what you do next. The sergeant gave a short, strained laugh. Lady, you're the one wearing cuffs. 2 words, clean and quiet and somehow terrifying. For now, Watts got out, yanked open her door, and the cuffs bit deeper into her wrists when he pulled her upright. We're going to teach you some respect, he muttered. She did not resist as he marched her inside, but she noted every rough shove, every unnecessary grip, every violation of transport rules. The body cameras caught it all. Inside the station, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. At the booking desk, the desk sergeant looked up from paperwork. What have we got? Cocaine possession, Watts said. Resisting arrest. I did not resist arrest, the woman said clearly. Shut up, Watts snapped. The desk sergeant frowned. Something in her tone did not fit the charge sheet. I need to make a phone call, she said. You'll get your call when we say so. That's illegal. The booking sergeant's expression tightened. Ma'am, you do have the right to. She knows her rights, Watts cut in. She hasn't shut up about them. Standard booking began. Fingerprints. Photos. Inventory of personal property. When the booking sergeant opened her wallet, he stopped. Wait a second. You work for the federal government? Watts's hand froze above the keyboard. What kind of federal work? She stayed silent. She did not need to answer. The system would. The booking sergeant typed in her information. The computer processed the data, ran it through federal databases, and then flashed a warning across the screen. Detective, the booking sergeant said, voice suddenly tight, you need to see this. Watts stepped over, read the display, and all the color drained from his face. Her federal ID had triggered a restricted alert. The system had identified her as federal law enforcement. A 15-year veteran, currently assigned to an internal affairs-related corruption unit. Watts's radio crackled with some new urgency, but urgency no longer mattered. They had already crossed every line. The booking sergeant looked from the screen to the woman in cuffs. Training kicked in. Federal officers require special protocol. Notifications. I have to make some calls. Watts grabbed his arm. Not yet. Detective, if she's federal, she's a suspect. That's all. But the screen told a different story, and computers were a lot harder to intimidate than people. She watched panic take shape in real time. She saw the exact instant they understood what they had done. The second their confidence cracked. She had waited 15 years for this kind of mistake. They had not simply broken into the wrong apartment in Chicago. Ronald Watts and his crew had kicked in the door of the federal agent investigating them. In the equipment room, Officer Sarah Johnson reviewed the body camera footage with trembling hands. She fast-forwarded to the timestamp. 9:17 p.m. Door explodes inward. Woman in underwear with hands raised. Calm request for a warrant. Johnson rewound and played it again. Something was badly wrong with this arrest. The woman quoted law from memory, demanded badge numbers with professional precision, and spoke about federal court with the confidence of someone who knew it firsthand. Johnson paused on her face. No panic, no confusion, just cold analysis, like she was collecting evidence. Then came the clip of Watts planting the drugs. Johnson's stomach turned. His hands moved too naturally, too efficiently. He slid the bag into the purse and found it almost immediately. She had heard rumors before, quiet ones, the kind that linger in hallways and vanish when a superior walks by, but this was the first time she had actually seen it. And worse, it had been captured on her own department's camera. She fast-forwarded to the arrest. The woman's voice came through the static. I'm being arrested on planted evidence. Calm, clear, legally exact. Johnson ran the name through the federal system, and the result made her blood go cold. FBI Special Agent Monica Marshall, 15 years of service, assigned to public corruption, the same public corruption group quietly circling their department. Johnson's hands shook as she grabbed her phone. The FBI line had been drilled into every officer's memory during training. She dialed. Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is Officer Sarah Johnson, Chicago Metro Police. We have a federal agent in custody. Silence. Then repeat that. We arrested a federal agent tonight. I think it was intentional. More silence, except for typing. Name? Johnson read it off the screen. Monica Marshall, FBI, Public Corruption Unit. More typing, faster this time. Where is Agent Marshall now? Holding cell. They're trying to push drug charges. Are you sure about the drugs? Johnson closed her eyes and saw Watts's hand planting the bag. The drugs were planted. I have body camera footage. The FBI voice sharpened immediately. Do not let anyone erase that footage. Do you understand? Yes, sir. We're sending a team. Keep Agent Marshall safe. The line went dead. Johnson sat there in a room filled with charging cameras, each one suddenly feeling like a container for pieces of corruption she had spent too long refusing to fully see. Her radio crackled with Captain Wilson's voice. All units, expedite Marshall's processing. I want her moved to county within the hour. Johnson felt ice in her veins. They were trying to bury this fast, to shove the case into a system where federal intervention would be slower. She grabbed the evidence bag containing Monica's personal property. Mixed in with her wallet and keys were federal credentials. FBI Special Agent Monica Marshall. The badge number matched the number appearing on internal files tied to quiet reviews of their unit. Suddenly, it all clicked. Monica was not just any federal agent. She was the one investigating them. Maybe for months, maybe for years. Every suspicious arrest, every questionable search, every planted bag, every whisper of corruption, her name was tied to the paperwork somewhere in the background. And tonight, Ronald Watts had personally handed her the last thing she needed to destroy them. Johnson felt loyalty and conscience tearing at each other inside her. These men had trained her, protected her, treated her like family. But family did not plant evidence on innocent people. Family did not violate rights. Family did not arrest the federal agent building a case against them. Her phone buzzed. A text from Watts. Delete the body cam footage. Mark equipment failure. Johnson stared at it. That message was a direct order to obstruct justice. She typed back, copy that. Then she did the opposite. She uploaded the footage to a secure federal server. The same kind of server Monica Marshall would trust with evidence. The next decision Johnson made would define the rest of her life. Captain Wilson appeared in the doorway. Johnson, did you wipe that footage? Working on it, sir. He studied her, looking for hesitation, for betrayal. Good. This stays between us. She nodded. Of course, sir. But the pressure in his face told her this was not their first cover-up. The rumors about a federal corruption probe suddenly looked a lot less like rumors. Monica Marshall was not simply investigating corruption. She had been living inside it, documenting it, building an airtight case from the inside, and now Johnson had become one of her most important witnesses. FBI Assistant Director James Rodriguez got Johnson's call at home. His secure phone vibrated on the nightstand, an emergency federal alert. He picked up immediately. Monica Marshall was one of his best investigators. 15 years of flawless service. Rodriguez, sir, this is Marshall's handler. We have a serious problem. He sat up at once. What happened? Local police arrested her about an hour ago. Drug possession charges. The officers involved are the very officers she's been targeting. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. Did they make her? Unknown. But they planted evidence. We have body camera confirmation. He was already getting dressed. Where is she? Chicago Metro Holding. They're trying to move her to county. No. Stop that transfer immediately. He activated the emergency team while still on the line. Federal Rapid Response started mobilizing in minutes. Then the handler added, Sir, there's more. Agent Marshall's emergency beacon just activated. Rodriguez froze. Monica did not trigger that beacon unless her life was in danger. When? 30 seconds ago. Her GPS coordinates lit up on his screen, fixed on the station. Full federal response, Rodriguez said, calling his second in command. Operation Clean House is compromised. Marshall is in custody. How bad? They arrested our lead investigator while she was gathering evidence against them. At the federal building, Rodriguez's team assembled tactical units, evidence specialists, internal affairs agents. The corruption case they had been building for years had just turned into a federal emergency. Monica Marshall did not merely know about police corruption. She was the corruption investigation. In the command vehicle, Rodriguez briefed the team. Marshall has been undercover for 18 months in the current phase. Tonight's arrest gives us the last direct evidence we need. Surveillance vans took position outside the station. Electronic intercept systems locked onto radio traffic, internal chatter, and digital communications. Officers inside were already discussing damage control, talking about getting stories straight, trying to contain the fallout. Rodriguez listened to every word through federal intercept equipment. All of it recorded. All of it usable. "Sir," the comms officer said, "we're intercepting orders to erase body camera files." "Too late," Rodriguez replied. He opened Monica's file. 15 years of corruption work, hundreds of documented violations. Dozens of officers implicated. Tonight connected every piece. The hum of surveillance equipment filled the van. Federal warrants were already signed and waiting. "Movement inside," someone reported. "They're trying to transfer Marshall." "Not happening." Rodriguez contacted the legal team. "Execute the warrants. Full federal jurisdiction." For 2 years in this phase, and 15 years across the broader pattern, Monica Marshall had collected evidence of planted drugs, false arrests, civil rights violations, and conspiracy. Tonight, Ronald Watts and his men had handed her the final piece. Rodriguez checked the emergency beacon again. Still live, still inside. Prepare for entry. His radio came alive with confirmations. Federal units were surrounding the building. His order changed everything. Full federal response now. The operation Monica had spent 15 years building was about to end. Not with her arrest, but with theirs. In interview room 3, Monica sat alone at a metal table bolted to the floor, gray walls, a flickering fluorescent tube overhead. The detective entered carrying a thick file folder, dropped it on the table with fake drama, and sat down. "Let's talk about your drug business." Monica said nothing. Her eyes found the security camera in the corner, red light blinking. "We found cocaine in your apartment," he said. "High grade, about $5,000 on the street. Planted evidence." He leaned back. "You sure about that?" "I watched you plant it. That's a serious accusation. It's a documented fact." He opened the file showing pages of fabricated reports, made-up surveillance notes, fake evidence chains. "According to this, you've been dealing for months. Your paperwork is fiction. Multiple witnesses saw narcotics activity. Name one." He hesitated too long. "Anonymous sources." "Anonymous sources do not survive federal court." Federal again. There was that word. His confidence slipped. "You think federal court is going to save you?" Monica met his stare. "I think federal court is where this ends." The sergeant stepped in, whispered urgently in the detective's ear, and the detective's face hardened. "Step outside." They left her alone. Through the wall, Monica heard the argument. The computer flagged her as federal. So what? So we arrested a federal agent. She's a drug dealer who happens to work for the government. "Detective, this is dangerous." Alone, Monica cataloged more violations. Delayed Miranda, denied phone call, excessive force in transport. Each one tightened the case. The detective came back in and slammed the door. "Let's try this again. Who supplies your cocaine?" "I do not use or distribute cocaine. The evidence says otherwise." The planted evidence. His fist struck the table. "Stop saying that." Monica did not blink. "Then stop planting evidence." He leaned into her space. The old intimidation routine. "You think you're clever? You think you can outplay us?" Her next line drained the blood from his face. "I think you've been under federal investigation for 2 years." Silence. The flickering light hummed. "What did you say?" he asked. "Operation Clean House, ring a bell?" The blood left his face completely. That name was classified. Only federal personnel and corruption targets should have known it. Monica went on, voice hard and steady. "Systematic evidence planting, civil rights violations, conspiracy to deprive citizens of constitutional protections." His hands started to shake. "How do you know any of that? How do I know about your crimes?" she asked. She did not need to say more. He backed toward the door. "I need to make a call." "To Captain Wilson," she said, "or directly to your lawyer?" He stopped with his hand on the handle. "Think carefully," Monica said. "Your next move matters." He left in a rush, and through the wall she heard panic spreading across the station like fire. Officer Johnson appeared at the door a little later, nervous energy pouring off her. "Ma'am, I brought you water." She set down the paper cup, brushed Monica's hand, and slipped her a folded note. Monica palmed it without looking. After Johnson left, she opened it. "FBI knows. Help coming. Stay strong." Relief moved through her chest. Quiet but real. Backup knew where she was. Backup was already in motion. Not long after, Captain Wilson came in himself. Agent Marshall, I apologize for the confusion. Agent Marshall, not suspect, not dealer, Agent Marshall. The lie had cracked. The performance was over. Monica stood slowly. I'd like my phone call now. Of course. As Johnson escorted her, she slipped something else into Monica's hand. Her FBI badge, recovered from property. The familiar weight of it felt like a pulse returning. Soon, very soon, the real investigation would begin. Captain Wilson personally walked Monica to release processing, wearing a thin, fake smile that looked like courtesy painted over panic. All charges dropped pending further review. The desk sergeant handled the paperwork too quickly, desperate to get her out of the building. Monica collected her property: wallet, keys, federal credentials, encrypted phone. 23 missed calls from headquarters. Wilson cleared his throat. We apologize for the inconvenience. Monica signed without replying. No hard feelings? He tried. She looked straight at him. That remains to be seen. The sentence hung there like a weapon. Outside, dawn was breaking over Chicago. Monica walked toward her car, knowing full well they were watching her. She switched her phone to full record mode. Every word, every face, every piece of evidence from this point forward would be preserved in real time. The phone buzzed instantly. Rodriguez. Marshall, are you secure? Negative. Still under surveillance. Copy. Federal units are in place. She got into the car but did not leave. Status, Rodriguez said. They gave us everything, Monica answered. Planted evidence on body cam. Constitutional violations documented. Obstruction conspiracy confirmed. Outstanding work. In the rearview mirror, she watched the station still lit up from wall to wall. Emergency meetings already underway. Sir, they know about Clean House. How? Rodriguez asked. I told them. He laughed softly through the line. Good. Let them panic. Inside the building, Wilson paced his office while Watts and the sergeant sat before him like children waiting for punishment. Do you understand what you've done? Watts tried to defend himself. We followed procedure. You arrested the federal agent investigating this department. We didn't know. You should have. Wilson yanked open a drawer and threw a thick file labeled confidential onto the desk. She's been watching us for 2 years. The sergeant went pale. 2 years? Every arrest, every search, every bag we planted. Wilson flung the file open, and pages spilled everywhere. Internal memos, surveillance summaries, evidence logs, all signed by Monica Marshall. She has everything, Wilson said quietly. Then Watts's phone buzzed. Anonymous text. Federal warrants in 30 minutes. Get counsel. His hands trembled as he showed it to Wilson. It's over, Wilson said. But Monica's phone lit up at the same moment with a very different message. Federal raid commencing. Operation Clean House entering final phase. She started the engine. Wilson's order to destroy evidence came too late. The footage had already been uploaded, secured, and shared with federal prosecutors. The bodycam server now backed up to federal systems beyond local control. Watts ran to equipment and found the cameras connected to outside networks. Federal networks. Every second of video was already gone from his reach. Johnson, he shouted, but Johnson had already called in sick and disappeared. Monica looked at the confirmation on her phone and knew it was finished. 15 years of corruption work, every violation, every conspiracy, every planted bag and broken right, all of it had been mapped. Tonight's arrest was never their win. It was her evidence package. Ronald Watts' biggest mistake had just become the cornerstone of the federal case against him. Monica drove out of the lot, and in her rearview mirror, the station churned with desperate motion. Too late. Much too late. This time, she would not be the one in cuffs. At exactly 6 a.m, black SUVs surrounded the station. FBI tactical units stepped out in perfect formation. Federal marshals locked down every entrance. Assistant Director Rodriguez led the operation himself. From his office window, Wilson saw them and whispered, "They're here." Inside, officers froze as federal agents stormed through the doors. Rodriguez's voice thundered across the station. Federal Bureau of Investigation. This building is now under federal jurisdiction. Officers scattered in shock. Some reached for weapons, others raised their hands immediately. Stand down, Rodriguez ordered. All personnel will comply. Wilson emerged with his hands visible. Director Rodriguez, this is highly irregular. Captain Wilson, Rodriguez said, you are under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights. The words hit like gunfire. Federal teams flooded the building. Evidence units seized computers. Tech specialists pulled body cam archives. Legal officers served warrants. Watts backed against the wall. This is insane. We're police. Rodriguez walked straight toward him. Ronald Watts, you are under arrest for evidence tampering, false imprisonment, and deprivation of rights under color of law. I want a lawyer. You'll get one. Rodriguez nodded to his people. Bring her in. The front doors opened again, and Monica Marshall stepped inside. No cuffs. FBI windbreaker zipped up. Federal credentials visible. The whole station fell silent. Rodriguez lifted her badge for the room to see. Special Agent Monica Marshall, lead investigator, Operation Clean House. Shock swept the room like a physical force. Monica had never been their victim. She had been their judgment. Rodriguez kept speaking, his voice carrying to every corner. Agent Marshall has been investigating this department for 15 years. 15 years. Every arrest she observed, every planted bag she documented, every constitutional violation she recorded. Watts's face had gone white. 15 years? Monica stepped forward. Every inch a federal officer, every illegal search, every fabricated drug charge, every civil rights abuse. She pulled out the encrypted phone they had ignored in her apartment. 2,000 hours of surveillance, 300 recorded conversations, 67 documented evidence plantings. The numbers landed like hammers. Rodriguez took over. Agent Marshall's work has produced federal indictments against 23 officers. 23, nearly half the unit. Monica opened the real case file, built over years. Ronald Watts. 17 confirmed evidence plantings, 43 illegal searches, 26 constitutional violations. His knees nearly gave out. Sergeant Bradley. 22 incidents of evidence tampering, 31 false arrest reports. Conspiracy to obstruct justice. Bradley sagged against the wall. Captain Wilson. Conspiracy to operate a criminal enterprise under color of law. Systematic deprivation of constitutional rights. Wilson shut his eyes. Monica kept reading name by name, charge by charge, violation by violation, every fact documented with the patience only years can build. Rodriguez addressed the room one final time. Operation Clean House has uncovered systemic corruption spanning nearly 2 decades. This is not isolated misconduct. This is organized criminal behavior carried out behind badges. Federal teams wheeled out servers, cabinets, storage boxes, body cameras, anything that might hold one more hidden piece. Watts found his voice. We were just doing our jobs. Monica turned to him. Planting drugs is not police work. It is criminal conspiracy. She hit play on her phone. The room filled with audio from the raid. Watts's own voice. Well, look what we have here. Then the rustle of the bag being pulled from her purse. Then Monica's voice, calm and sharp. I watched you plant it. The recording continued. Every threat, every lie, every violation. Watts's own body camera had betrayed him. Rodriguez explained the final piece. Agent Marshall's emergency beacon activated during booking. Federal surveillance captured the rest. Her calm during arrest, her knowledge of the law, her request for body cam review, she was not panicking. She was building evidence. That is what federal agents do. Then he held up another device. This recorder was hidden in Agent Marshall's bedroom lamp. It captured the entry, the planting of evidence, the threats, and the cover-up discussion. All of it is admissible. Monica's 15-year case had reached its end. Every corrupt officer identified, every crime documented, every victim finally on the path to vindication. The evidence did not point to a few bad actors. It exposed a system turned rotten from the inside. Rodriguez's final words sealed it. Federal charges will be filed within 24 hours. The machinery of justice had started moving. The file on Ronald Watts alone was inches thick. This had never really been about drugs or a noise complaint. It was about justice delayed until the exact moment it could no longer be denied. 6 months later, the federal courthouse was packed. The biggest corruption trial Chicago had seen in years was ending. Monica Marshall sat beside the prosecutors, 15 years of work reduced to stacks of evidence boxes rising almost to shoulder height. Judge Harrison looked down at the verdict forms. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman rose. We have, Your Honor. Ronald Watts sat in the defendant's chair wearing federal orange instead of a badge. His hands shook. On the charge of conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, we find the defendant guilty. Monica allowed herself the smallest smile. One guilty count in a case built on 15 years of patience. Then the rest followed. Guilty on evidence tampering. Guilty on false imprisonment. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Each word cracked through the courtroom like thunder. Bradley got 12 years in federal prison. Wilson got 15. Ronald Watts got 20. Their badges meant nothing. Their uniforms saved no one. Federal law had reached exactly where it was supposed to reach. Monica's testimony had finished them. Calm. Exact. Devastating. She laid out every planted charge, every illegal raid, every rights violation. The jury listened as the truth unfolded, not as isolated misconduct, but as a coordinated criminal enterprise hiding behind official authority. After sentencing, Monica stepped into the hallway where reporters surged toward her. "Agent Marshall, how long did this investigation take?" 15 years of careful documentation, she replied. "What message does this send?" She considered it for a moment. Justice takes patience, courage, and people willing to keep working inside the system until the truth can no longer be buried. The truth does not disappear. It waits for the right moment to surface. Pens flew across notebooks. Cameras flashed. Sarah Johnson made her way through the crowd. She had testified for the prosecution, chosen conscience over loyalty, and helped confirm Monica's case from the inside. "Agent Marshall," she said, "thank you for giving me a chance to do the right thing." Monica looked at her. "You gave yourself that chance." Johnson's testimony had mattered. It was the insider account that confirmed the evidence and helped turn suspicion into certainty. Her career survived. She transferred to a federal task force, a new life earned by moral courage. Monica walked toward her car past protesters and reform advocates gathered on the courthouse steps, signs raised high, voices demanding real change. Some change came fast. Most of it took years. This case had begun with whispers about planted evidence and ended with federal convictions and structural reform. New training rules, stronger body camera requirements, expanded oversight. The city would not heal overnight, but healing had finally begun. Monica's phone buzzed. Rodriguez again. "Outstanding work, Marshall. Corruption wants to discuss your next assignment." She glanced back once at the courthouse. Justice served, but more work waiting. What's the case? Systemic abuse allegations in detention facilities. It could take years. Years of patient infiltration, years of evidence gathering, years of building a case, one fact at a time. "I'll take it," Monica said, because that was who she was. Federal agent, truth hunter, builder of long cases in dark places. Reform never arrived in one dramatic burst. It came piece by piece, case by case, one rotten system at a time. She drove away knowing the next file was already waiting. The work would continue. The mission would continue. Justice delayed was not justice denied when someone kept pushing truth into the light. Ronald Watts would spend 20 years in federal prison. Bradley would serve 12. Wilson would serve 15. Victims would receive compensation. Records would be corrected. And Monica Marshall would return to the field, ready to spend another 15 years building the next case. Because corruption survives in darkness, but federal agents work in the light, and sooner or later, the light always wins. This story is fictional, but its roots are not. It is inspired by real corruption cases like that of Ronald Watts in Chicago, where a police officer sworn to protect the public instead exploited that power for years. Watts was eventually exposed in a federal investigation involving theft, extortion, and abuse of authority, and his actions contributed to the collapse of hundreds of criminal convictions, forcing the system to confront how deeply the damage had spread. What makes cases like this so disturbing is not just the existence of a bad cop. It is the realization that corruption rarely acts alone. It grows in silence. It survives through fear. It spreads when systems fail to question themselves. In the Watts case, officers were accused of planting evidence, manipulating charges, and targeting the very people who had the least power to fight back. Justice, which should have been a shield, became a weapon. That is the darkest side of authority, when a badge stops meaning protection and starts meaning control. When the law is no longer applied equally, but selectively. When truth is buried not because it is hidden, but because no one dares to bring it to light. And that is why stories like this matter, because they remind us that power must always be questioned, that accountability is not optional, and that justice is not automatic. It is built, protected, and sometimes fought for over years. Even decades. One honest voice can expose what 100 silent ones allow to continue. One piece of evidence can undo years of lies, and one moment, just one mistake, can bring an entire system crashing down. The real lesson is not just about corruption. It is about courage. The courage to speak, the courage to refuse, the courage to stand on truth even when the system itself feels against you. If this story made you think, if it made you question, or if it stayed with you even for a moment, take 1 second to support it. Leave a like, drop your thoughts in the comments, share it with someone else, because awareness is where accountability begins. And sometimes that is how real change starts.